officially welcome all. Good evening. My name is Hemant Sood, and as the chairman for the IID Delhi chapter, I welcome you all to 2020, the IID Design Webinar Series, Our Vision for the Future. This series of webinars has been going on since May, and we plan to continue this till COVID solution is found, hopefully. And we've been having these webinars on a wide range of design related topics where some of the leading architects, interior designers, and consultants from not just India but around the world have participated and shared their insights and their views. And we've talked on a very, very diverse range of topics. This series is brought to you by 8 chapters of Triple ID, and I would love to thank my 7 fellow chairpersons who've supported the event. Siddharth Naik at Goa, Anshuman Sharma at Jaipur, Leena Nimbalkar at Mumbai, Ashima Vashisht at Chandigarh, Vishal Mashruwala at Surat, Mohammad Nisar at Mangalore, and Geeta Karthikeyan at Coimbatore. A special thanks also goes out to our IID head office for their support. Jabin Zacarias, IID President, Jignesh Modi, IID Honorary Secretary and Mentor of the Delhi chapter, and Tanuja BK, IID President-elect from Delhi. So we'll start by introducing my co-host for the evening, MB Ravi Kumar. Ravi is an architect and he's a partner with Mandeville Designs Inc., a Delhi-based design firm. And he's also the treasurer of the IID Delhi chapter. And he's also the tech brains behind this webinar series. So he and Rishu are the people who've been keeping this going. So Ravi, over to you to introduce the panelists for today and to take the webinar forward.
Thank you so much, Hemant. I will now like to introduce our 4 young panelists. We'll start with Ashok Grover. Rishu, can you share his PPT, please? Ashok Grover is a B.Arch graduate from SPA Delhi in 1980 and an M.Arch in architectural design. He has taught at prestigious schools of architecture and design. He's taught at Sushant School of Art and Architecture from 1993 to 2011, was director at MBS Dwarka, and is currently teaching at SPA Delhi. Under the able guidance and influence of his professors in college, Ashok developed his innate sensitivity to Euclidean and environmental values and fine-tuned his special skills in construction logic and detailing. His projects embraced a wide and varied gamut, including restoration, conservation, residences, farmhouses, havelis, automobile stations, showrooms, hotels, institutional, educational, and industrial buildings, and ashrams. Ashok has worked extensively on district primary education program as a national resource person and a central inspector for national elementary education buildings pan-India. He has won accolades and prizes in low-cost housing design competitions organized by HUDCO, and he has also half a dozen publications under his belt on varied topics like urban design, contracts, etc. I am personally privy to his enormous skills in teaching, wherein the amount of knowledge and grassroots techniques that he shares with his students has to be seen to be believed. Welcome, Ashok, and we look forward to your insightful inputs in this webinar.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Dr. Reena Surana. Rishu, can you run her PPT? Dr. Reena Surana graduated in architecture, did post-graduation urban design, and PhD in environmental planning, all from SPA in Delhi. Having worked with renowned architects C.P. Kukreja and Raj Rewal, she joined the Delhi Development Authority in 1988, where she worked as an architect in the Special Projects Wing for 4 years. After that, Reena joined Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, where she has been head of department and associate professor, Department of Architecture and Planning. Her PhD resources and the development of human settlements in Udaipur, Rajasthan received a lot of acclaim, where she highlighted why the sustainability of a human settlement is dependent on proper water resource planning. Her strong views and interviews on the art of teaching, I have seen some of the videos that she has shared on YouTube. On the art of teaching, the education policies and training of students, while having received a lot of flack, has also highlighted the lacuna in the education system, especially in architecture and design. Welcome, Reena, and we look forward to your views and ideas on the need to rethink design education in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi.
I would now like to introduce Dr. Badri Narayanan Srinivasan, which is a very long name. We all know him as Badri, and I think his students know him as Dr. Badri. Rishu, just put on the first slide of his. Yeah, it's already on. So Dr. Badri is a B.Arch from SPA Delhi, a postgraduate from Nottingham Trent University, and a PhD in architectural education from SPA Delhi. He worked in the industry for 10 years before setting up a multidisciplinary design practice. He has been involved with academics for 30 years, and since joining the Department of Interior Architecture and Design, IAD, at Pearl Academy in 2010, he has taken the lead in curriculum development and pedagogy. Badri, as he thinks and writes about the critical connections between theory and practice, arts and sciences, philosophy, and the everyday. Recently has been leading interdisciplinary modules that bring together interior design, product design, communication design, and fashion design. He is a member of the Institute of Indian Interior Designers, IID Delhi Regional Chapter, and I think he was also on the managing committee some years ago, and of the International Network of Traditional Building Architecture and Urbanism, that is INTBAU. He has several national and international publications to his credit and is passionately devoted to pursue for himself and for others. Architect, academic, and educationist par excellence, and a not so well-known facet of his expertise, he's an accomplished singer. I saw the Bob Dylan song on YouTube, Badri. It was fabulous. We are indeed happy to have you with us on this webinar. Finally, last but not the least, Dr. Deepika Shetty. Rishu, please share the screen. Dr. Deepika Shetty completed her B.Arch from Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies, Mumbai, in 1998. Post-graduation in urban design from CEPT University, Ahmedabad in 2001, and PhD from Manipal Academy of Higher Education in 2015. She was a consultant for various government projects for Coastal Vulnerability Assessment 2012, Comprehensive Development Plan 2005, Post-Disaster Planning 2001, Sustainable Spatial Planning of Gram Panchayat 2020, and is presently the Director of the School of Architecture and Planning, Mahe University, Manipal. Deepika has been a resource person and advisor for topics of disaster management, sustainable development, heritage management, and research methodology. Welcome, and we look forward to your views on design education in this webinar. Okay, now that we are through with the introductions, I would now like to introduce the topic of the webinar today. See, there's a lot of angst in the air, especially amongst the student community in the design industry, regarding their future in these pandemic times. They do not know what lies in store for them in 8 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 to 3 years before things normalize. So will proper practical education be imparted to them? And even after that, will they have sufficient work, especially looking at the not so bright immediate future of our industry? In this scenario, teachers, educationists, designers, architects, and of course, policymakers have a major role to play to ensure that the future of these students is secure and they are taught to think innovatively. as Malcolm Forbes, the son of the creator of the Forbes magazine, said, "I could mind with an open one." Unquote. Now you are all thinkers and educationists, and we would like you to share your vision for the future of design education. My first question goes to all the panelists. The very simple question I request you to answer briefly. What or who inspired you to take up teaching? And how you got into this teaching profession? Anyone can go first. Reena?
My father, I was kind of aware of what the profession of teaching involves because my father was himself in the faculty of IIT Delhi, and his commitment to his students was something which inspired me. And also, he was living in a campus, and therefore there was this continuous interaction of students and of young people, and there were a lot of activities forever going on to which we were privy. And that to be surrounded with young people keeps your mind really open, and you are always looking at things from a different perspective, which which was not your own when you were that age. And this process makes you a better person, less judgmental, and always open to new ideas. And I thought that is the best way of keeping young and keeping your mind keen and sharp.
Thank you, Reena. Ashok, how did you get into this? You're muted. Please unmute yourself.
I am an accidental teacher, and there was a time when SPA was under Delhi University, and when we graduated, it was not under the Delhi University. And as the government works, it took them 2 years to make different degrees. So we were called and said the degrees are in the office locker. Please come and take them. There is no convocation. So when I went there was this late Professor Agnihotri. He called me in and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "We've come here to take our degrees." He said, "There is a batch of Nalayaks. Would you like to teach them construction since you were good in technology?" So that's how I got hooked. That was in 1985, 86, I think. And then, as Reena said, it really gives you a high with people around. And I remember I've at least changed my vocabulary 3 times as the generation has changed. So from Beatles, we are now via Metallica, and now we are in a stage where we have all kinds of videos, and we have to talk the student language, which my grandchildren speak. So I speak the same language, and I think she's right. It keeps you young, and I think it is like a drug. And but the only thing is, of course, it doesn't let you practice as much as you can. There is a domain within which government asks you to work. So maybe.
Absolutely, Ashok. And like I said, I have been privy to the language that you speak of the students. I've heard you, and very impressive. Badri.
I had spent about 8 years in the industry after graduating. I suddenly felt a need to kind of enrich myself, and I wanted to kind of learn a lot of things. And I felt that I was being kind of limited in my approach, and the industry happens to be very limiting. So just then a new school of architecture had just been started by Professor Ashok Lal, Professor Menon, and Professor Ashish Ganju. So they had started this completely new school with a totally fresh ideology. And I had been taught by Professor Ashok Lal in SPA. And he was such an inspiring teacher. He was one of those teachers who really made you think about design. And I felt that the idea of practicing part-time and teaching part-time would kind of enrich both my practice and my teaching, and it did. And I spent nearly 12 years at TVP teaching before the school closed down. And after that, no looking back. Then I got into pedagogy. Then I did a PhD on pedagogy. So it's been kind of going deeper and deeper into teaching. And I'm really passionate about it. Not only teaching, it's also the academics and the curriculum design and so on. Yeah.
Thank you, Badri. And finally, Deepika, how did you get into this teaching
Uh,
profession?
Actually, I initially, I didn't have the background of architecture when I joined architecture. My father was a teacher, school teacher. My grandfather started school in remote area of villages and gave a lot of importance to education, though he was a businessman by profession. So for me, architecture throughout has been a journey of discovery, and I enjoyed that journey of learning so much that I wanted to continue it. Um, Actually, from college days, I had the knack of teaching. My friends used to always say, "You'll be a good teacher." Then, due to personal reasons, I had to come to Manipal to be close to my parents who had retired. And I found this opportunity to join this institute at a very young age. Uh, but what I realized is teaching does not mean that you do only teaching. Actually, you become a very good student. And also, it gave me an exposure to the possibilities of expanding the domain of the profession. Over the years, I have combined my architecture knowledge with urban design, environment management, geosciences, heritage planning, and all this was possible. The broadening of my horizons was possible because I was in academics. I kept learning, I kept improving my skill sets, and the journey has been very exciting because of the young students. As I relate to each and every one of you, the way students inspire you, as well as the interactions, the debates that we have. Even each studio becomes a lab. I mean, I call the studios a lab where we keep experimenting and questioning. Why should it be this way and why not another way? And that process really enriches your mind, and you keep feeling that you can do so many things in a better way, in a more, I think the time we take to dwell on how it should be done cannot be there in practice, because you have to deliver the things immediately when the client asks. There is a pressure as a business, as a profession, that you have to deliver the product. Whereas in academics, we have a time to dwell, we have time to question, we have time to debate, we have time to explore new possibilities without any pressure or any impact on your professionalism. So that, I think, helps you grow and broaden your horizons. In fact, the way practicing architects come, we have this kind of debate in a studio where they are more into what is in the trend now, and we keep thinking what can be the future. So I think this whole interaction in the studio is very exciting, and that has allowed me to be part of very unique and interesting projects being in academics. Like, if you see my projects, they're not the usual projects which any practicing professional would do. Those are topics which only an academician who has a lot of time to, think on how to do, what to do, can address it. They are very exploratory in nature. And I think that's the joy I've got from academics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepika. Each of the panelists as to why they came into this. The specific questions to each to give your views.
Ravi, could I jump in for a second?
Sure.
I think Rishu's got an interesting poll that he'd probably like to run. So Rishu, can you run poll 1, please? This is for the audience, and I think the speakers can also give their opinion. Ravi, would you like to read that out?
Education. Should it be practical knowledge?
Rafi, we are losing your voice bad terribly.
Should I read that out again?
No, I think people can anyway read it, but I'm just saying your voice is cracking.
Only now? Only now?
Only now, we're just recently, yes.
Yes, please.
5 seconds and then we will end.
I interpret.
Okay, so the results are saying practical knowledge is 38%, ethics and values 43%. Okay, so nobody gives a damn for benefits to society. That's great from the audience. Thank you. And that brings me to a little observation I had. Practical knowledge is up there almost at the top with ethics and values. My issue our institute has faced, the Indian Institute of Indian Interior Designers, we have a lot of colleges coming to us telling us, please absorb our students or help them get training and placement. And then we go back to our members who are obviously practicing professionals and tell them, why don't you take these students in, train them, and subsequently, after the training is over, give them a job. And the biggest problem we find with most of them is that, we don't end up getting people with practical experience. Theoretically, they're very good. So we have 4 of the leading, educationists right here. So maybe you guys can help us in letting us know how can we impart that practical knowledge to our students so that they are ready for industry when they come out. A lot of other professional courses have built-in training programs. They're built-in, working in the industry. Here we don't have much, especially for interior design. Architecture is slightly better off.
Probably, Badri, you could take that question.
Firstly, I think there is a bit of a problem I see in the way industry treats education. It's almost as though that they want a ready-made package who can start performing from day one. And the industry also doesn't want to get involved too much with the education. And it's a kind of a, expectation from the education that, they'll get everything ready. So first, I think that needs to change. The industry needs to take a more proactive approach to education. They should be coming in more often into colleges, sharing their experiences and so on. Number 2, I think education should also take steps to bridge the gap between education and industry. And we can no longer afford to have these 3-4 years of course where students are totally closeted in a studio and they see a site for the first time when they graduate, like it happens a lot in architecture. And then they need to unlearn a lot of things and start afresh. We cannot afford to do that now. So I think we need kind of efforts from both sides.
Right.
And Badri, I'd like to add to that, to part of my question is, what role can IIID play in this, in bridging the gap between industry and education? Because that's what we're here for, really.
That's a great question. Thank you. I think the IIID is really in a position to bring the two together and create an overlap space where professionals can share their projects and share the entire process of how a project comes about, not just the finished projects, which is what tends to happen, where architects and interior designers come and show off their finished products. I think we need more of the process which students can relate to and which they can take back and integrate with the education. Right from how the project is pitched for, what kind of drawings were produced as presentation, what were the kind of business questions which were asked, what were the glitches during the contract, the whole show. Right now, all this information is kind of guarded and it's a kind of embedded knowledge which lies within a lot of professionals. But all this information needs to be shared openly.
Badri, you will be happy to know that IIID has started one of these processes. We have something called Reading Master Practices, which is happening across all 32, 33 chapters of IIID. where a master practice is chosen, an institute or a college is affiliated with that webinar, and five students from that college take two projects from that master practice, study it, and then present it, so that they understand from the client's point of view as well as the designer's point of view how a real life project happened. And
That's
that's
very
already
interesting.
happened
Very good.
in multiple places. Jaipur has already participated in that. In fact, Anshuman Sharma, the chairman of the Jaipur chapter, was the person who started this whole process, and it's gone across the entire country right now.
Well, I'm proud to say Anshuman has been one of my first students. And
Yeah,
I'm very
Ashok,
proud of him.
Ashok, you want to say?
I think what Dr. Badri said is very important, but I also think that they have a chance. Triple ID has a chance to redesign the attitude towards uh, the syllabus. In architecture, the attitude is towards design only, and the process. In that process, the designers have forgotten that you cannot build if you don't know technology. So I keep on telling the students, you can't be Zaha Hadid or Norman Foster if you don't know technology, your climatology and your services. So there has to be a balance, and that is very important. And every year there should be one semester of internship. Architecture syllabus is it's too old and it's becoming too rigid. But I think Triple ID has a choice at the moment before the government takes over. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope that never happens. But let's carry on with our questions, which are all on the same strain. My first question is to Deepika. With respect to the introduction of the topic and Hemant's question, Badri's response, etc., etc., I would like your view first on what you think is the role that the academia plays or should play in this scenario, and how will that contribute to the betterment of the profession and the design industry as a whole?
Yeah. Actually, when we look at academia, they have at least four major roles, which I think are very critical. One is the ethics and values of the profession is laid in the academia. Because till we tell what are the principles of the profession in academia, you cannot expect it to flow into the profession. So there the ABC starts. And then the second one is about being industry ready. Like they said, have practical knowledge, have the technology background, have the services, all the fundamentals. Because many a times the practicing architects forget that how raw the students come to academia. The first and second year students are so raw, they don't know ABC of anything. So the whole training of laying the foundation of every aspect of the profession is on the academia. Third is the questioning mind, to think of better ways of doing things. And I think the role towards society, when the voting came, I did put my vote for role to the society, because till we are meaningful to the society, our existing thrives as a profession. If we lose our meaning, contribution to society, where society feels we are required for them to live in a better way, I think the need for this profession can be also threatened in a big way. And I feel that fourth very important part is innovation and research, where I feel that architects should be there in every industry related to built environment, whether it's a product design, whether it's urban design, whether it's smart city, whether it is a small element of the whole built environment or a material, new technology, because this interdisciplinary thinking will lead to us innovating things for the built environment. And the way of thinking as a researcher is also important, because if the product are not suited to a profession, if you see today, we have become kind of bound by the tools given to us by other professionals. We are not creating our own tools and medium. The solar panels may be a technology from the other sciences, but how the panels should be designed can come from an architect. or any other product for that matter, we have a lot of role to define it and develop it, be it regulations, be it policies, be it implementation criteria, technology, product, everything. So I think every industry should have a role of a designer. I don't mean only architect, I mean product designer, interior designers, all designers should have a role whenever the built environment has come into picture. And that research component is very weak. Our contribution to research and innovation in the industry in defining the future of the how the profession would be is very less right now, not even 1%, which should be at least 10%. And that's how the future of the profession will be defined by us in a better way, in a way which I think all of us share certain, but our say in the way built environment is becoming lesser and lesser. The control we have on the built environment is becoming lesser, which is very sad to see. So in fact, when they said future of this profession, I think design is having a very bright future, because every aspect of today, if you see, we need designers to think and evolve better solutions, be it a small product to a built environment, to urban design, to policy. I think all of us as designers have a role to play in defining the built environment in various roles, not just practice. Practice can be 50%. According to me, the other roles of innovation, of debate, and getting into interdisciplinary profession will define the built environment and the designer's place in the society in a better way. So that is the role the academia has to play. Build these bridges between different disciplines, build this innovative way of thinking and research foundation through the higher semesters. And in the lower semesters, lay the ABCs of every aspect of the profession, where they learn how to be ethical, how to bring values, what is their role, and the fundamentals of design. Yeah, so that's what I think academia can do for the industry as a whole. I'm not just looking at practice, I'm looking at products, I'm looking at innovations, technology, everything.
You know, from the reactions that Badri was giving, I think he totally and completely agrees with you. So Badri, my question: does anyone disagree in view to what Deepika said? Not really. So Badri, on that score, we will now go to you. See, all four of you are architects, and three of the panelists are teaching, I think, hardcore architecture. Only you are teaching interior design, or as I would like to call it, interior architecture. So we would like to know your views on what how you think students of design should be educated for the future. You've already given us a short insight in response to Hemant's question earlier on, but can you tell us in a little more detail as to what you think can be done or should be done?
Thank you. When I started my practice after graduating as an architect,
would you like if to share your PPT? You can do that whenever you
not as yeah, I'll let you know. Okay. Let me start by saying that when I started my practice as an architect, I was mostly doing residences and interiors and interior refurbishments, which is like, you know, breaking walls, extending rooms, relocating kitchens and toilets inside apartments. This is the kind of work that I was getting. And I found it really fascinating because, first of all, clients wanted to really inhabit their space. They had their own personal sensibilities. Sometimes they had their objects with them. They had existing furniture which they wanted you to accommodate. And there were 4 or 5 people in a family. So one really got into the nitty-gritties of how space needs to be inhabited, which unfortunately architectural education never trained me enough at. I had to learn that on the job. So when this new department of interior architecture started in Pearl Academy, I jumped at it, and Tapan joined first, Professor Tapan Chakravarti, and he requested me to join. And since the department had just started, we were in a very fascinating position of trying to define what interior architecture really is. Is it limited by four walls? Does it lie somewhere between architecture and interior decoration? Is it more towards interior decoration? Is it more towards architecture? What are its physical boundaries? What are its disciplinary boundaries? So we had a lot of debates around this. And eventually, I mean, to start with, we started with defining the discipline very tightly because we were interested in getting competent interior architects out there in the industry who could be absorbed in the industry. Then gradually we found ourselves in the last 4 or 5 years of loosening up the boundaries slowly. So I would like to share a presentation of 4 slides where I would like to share my vision for the future. Some of it is like a vision, some of it is like a concern for the future. Yes, thanks. So the first thing I would like to talk about is that education is going to get more and more vocationalized. The gap between education and industry is closing, and it's going to close even more. It's slowly but surely. The new education policy also stresses a lot on vocation. But in the process, I'm afraid, is critical thinking, analytical, intellectual skills, are they getting undervalued? I don't know. This is something which we need to see. We see more education and industry partnership, like Hemant Sood mentioned. And both will be playing more proactive roles rather than waiting for each other to kind of feed the other. The ideal situation will be where theory becomes a critique of practice and practice becomes a critique of theory. This is something which architect Prem Chandravarkar talked about once. And to me, this is the ideal situation. I hope we will get there sometime. The next is the discipline being slowly opened up. I foresee that interior design will no longer be defined by four walls. For instance, we could even have urban interiors. We could be designing open spaces, courtyards, which are enclosed and they become part of interior architecture. And therefore, gradually, there will be an intermingling of architecture, landscape, product communication, lifestyle, and interiors in education. And this is already happening. Then I think we are headed more for a liberal arts model, which is what NEP also talks about, with core and electives rather than a technical model followed by the traditional architectural education. Next point, please. And right now there is a very strict kind of a mental division between who is a generalist and who is a specialist. I foresee in the future that this division is going to break down also. We'll have people who are generalists as well as specialists in something. But in the process, the concern is that will the core competence of an interior architect compromised or will it get enhanced? The next slide, please. Then we are going to see more and more integration of technology, both in the practice and in education. We are going to have AR, VR, AI, parametrics, 3D printing. All this will become very commonplace. Right now, it's very exotic, but it's going to become more and more commonplace. The gap between visualizing and making, which right now is very, very cumbersome, it's going to get more and more smooth. Then also the gap, kind of an artificial gap that we have between craft and industry, the artisanal approach to design versus technological approach to design. This also is going to merge, which is paradoxical, but again, it's happening already. And technology is going to facilitate sustainable design very soon. I mean, we'll just have a meter or an index which directly just tells you that something is sustainable or not straight away. And finally, technology will serve human and environmental well-being and not only profits, which is what it is doing now. But I think there'll be a big rallying which will happen. Then finally, design will become a lived experience rather than design as an artifact, which is what is happening now. Is, you know, design is seen as an abstract composition minus people, it's splashed in these design magazines, all that is going to go away. Then physical, mental, emotional, environmental well-being will be the benchmark of good design. This may not be as subjective as it is now, but there may be a quantitative index, just like the LEEDs, you know, rating. There might be something which is developed through AI. then good design will be less elitist, more commonplace. Then design will become more a basic need rather than a luxury that it is now. And design will become an agent of social advocacy, which is also happening. This is my overall kind of a vision of what might happen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Badri. I think your take encompasses the entire gamut of what you think design education should be in the future. Does anyone want to jump in here with anything that Badri may have missed out, or if you do not agree with him?
Actually, I agree with him, but there's one more facet which it opens up is the startups. The startup should not be limited to IT and other engineering. I feel architects can do wonderful jobs as startups and have their own companies with their own innovative ideas. In fact, we are pushing our students towards it. So I would just put it as an extension to what Dr. Badri has started as interdisciplinary and innovation. It can even lead to having new companies, which is beyond just practice. It could be a business that you are developing the product and you're manufacturing it and giving it to the industry. It could be a software, it could be an app, it could be a product, whatever, all the facets of built environment, which I think couple of people have done it, but it has not become part of our system, education system, which I think it should be. Though some of the students have ventured into startups themselves, they are doing manufacturing and business of a component in the build industry, but I think it should become part of our education system also, the startup culture. Yeah, the innovation and stuff.
Anything else that anyone would like to add to that, or shall I move to the next question?
Ravi, I had a point, and in fact, since it came up in the presentation, I would like to ask Badri that. Badri, is there a threat to our profession from AI, since you mentioned AI? Where do you see this profession 5 years or 10 years? We're talking about future of design. Where is it 5 to 10 years from now? Will we all get replaced by AI because they can do it better than us?
No, I don't think so, because whenever there was a kind of a disruption through technology, the humans have always come out on top, and they have somehow adopted that technology, and they've proved themselves to be somebody who can advise people on how to use the technology mindfully. So I don't think artificial intelligence can ever replace human sensibilities and human emotions, because ultimately, emotions are really our forte, and I think if we hold on to that, along with our strong sense of ethics, which I don't think any artificial intelligence can manage that as yet, I think we can really come out on top and work with AI, blend with it, and produce something far greater than what we have been able to achieve now. AI is just a tool as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Badri, but emotion and
ethics, if you are very strong about it, you'll discover that you may have a temporary setback, but eventually in the long run, path,
But don't you think, Badri, that AI has already taken over so much of our lives? I mean, the mobile phone that we are using, this webinar is also, full of artificial intelligence only. Don't
But
you think it's...
we are still talking, aren't we?
See, the content will always come from people and the mind. It's too complex a system. The design decisions are too complex a system to be simplified into an automatic response. And no matter what AI is there, the kind of decision making that is required in design cannot be automated. I don't think that is possible, at least in the near future. Another 10, 20 years for sure, it's not possible. And also what the AI should do is guided by the design thinking. So maybe we are setting the parameters for AI. What data it should take is also fed by the people, that is the design. And what it should do with the data is also fed by the designers. So, and we may change that language for every project. So the way of designing might change, but the designer's role will be very critical. That's for sure, because we are looking at parametric design and different kind of solutions. But it doesn't mean that the role of designer has become less. In fact, it is just doing different things. That's all. It's not lowering its role as a designer. I would say the designer is now telling them what to do, and there is another additional assistant come into the office to do what they want. That's all. It's like an additional draftsman, I would say, who is much more maybe faster than a human draftsman. But it cannot be the designer or the decision maker. That's all.
Devika, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. Anyway, it's my job to disrupt. But I am not going to be, I don't really feel that AI can be reduced to the level of a additional draftsman who just walked in, unless the additional draftsman owns the company and is paying your salary. Because I feel there's a lot of AI is a very powerful tool. Today, you talked about design thinking and how designers are, the topic is coming from them, the conversation is coming from there. But as you see today in many places, even in the news, the narrative is being controlled behind the scenes. You don't even know what you're thinking, because AI and technology and big data is even today thinking and controlling how you think and how you feel and how you respond to things. There's so much data being collected and so much data being uh, monitored. Elections are being swung on that. So many things are being swung on that. Design thinking is going to be, could be the next sacrifice on the altar of AI.
No.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There was a issue with my this thing. Can you now hear me? I've come onto the phone instead of my laptop.
That's fine. We can hear you now.
Hello?
Yeah, it's better now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, especially if you
Okay,
keep your
okay.
video off,
So
the sound is clearer.
If you put your video off, your audio is clearer.
Okay, let me see. Stop video. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So I missed about 5 minutes or I think of whatever the proceedings were going on. So anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Badri, you were responding to me, so would love to hear what you have to say.
No, I do completely agree with you in the sense there was this very disturbing documentary called Social Dilemma on Netflix. And
Yes.
the result of watching that was that I went off all social media. But what I would like to say here is that there is of course, you talk about emotions being swayed by artificial intelligence, but I think there is something called discrimination and critical thinking, which again brings us back to education. If we build enough of that, I don't think people would be so easily swayed by, so many likes. So somebody say has some whatever 30K likes or something, you will not feel compelled to like the same thing. You'll still exercise your own judgment. And I think that is what education should do, not be swayed by the mob, which is what social media is becoming. It's just becoming another mobocracy.
I would just like to give you a very simple example that we used to design our routes as per the shortest distance in Google Maps. Let's put it that way, that Google Maps are telling us how to travel rather than how we used to decide by asking people, or we have a routine. But a person who is familiar with the place and has certain likes and dislikes would still choose to go in a particular way, irrespective of what the Google Map says, because they want to do those activities, meet those people, do interim activities. Also, there was a very interesting designer or researcher who said, what if I make the decision with environment as a criteria, that I want to be healthy, so whichever route is less polluted, I will take that, not which is the shortest time. So designer has the power to change the way the trend is going also. It's not about just going with the flow that Google says this is the shortest distance, all of us should take that route. Similarly, AI may tell so many things, but it's not necessary. We have to use what we want and decide for ourselves how we want to go. That's what I want.
I'm going to take the example of the game of chess. A lot of people say that no computer can ever beat a chess master. I totally disagree. In fact, I found this on Google. The current world champion is a gentleman called Magnus Carlsen, and he says he will never play his computer because he uses it to train, to recommend moves for future competition, but he won't play it because he just loses all the time. And there's nothing more depressing than losing without even being in the game. So I would tend to disagree. Badri mentioned about meters for calculating sustainability. So there will be meters, there will be programs, there will be computer, logic, 3D printing, AI, all these are going to not just play a major role in our lives, they just might take over. I don't know how many of you have seen The Matrix. That was a film made, I don't know how many
Ravi,
years ago.
Actually, before
Ravi, I tend to agree with you.
Yeah. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
So Ravi, I tend to agree with you. If we have now at our disposal so many tools that, just to master those tools and get overwhelmed by that, very often that becomes the goal rather than to think and to design and to analytically work out what is the product that you want. Rather than that, it is the tool which is governing what is going to be the outcome of what you have started to do.
Yeah.
So
good point. Good point.
So
I said very, very good point.
So that is one point I wanted to make. Another point I wanted to make is that every institute, or if not at the institute level, every studio should have at its disposal, should have, when they start a studio, the the composition of the studio. You see, I have gone through a whole system of adding value addition to my curriculum, to my biodata, by adding degrees. Now those degrees have helped me in the process of thinking and analyzing things, and also in how I teach. But but it has also made me a particular kind of human being and a particular kind of tutor. Now, if in the studio you have a mix of somebody who is not having those value additions, and has a freedom of not being burdened, and has a freedom of thinking out of the box, and there is a healthy respect, then the in the studio, the analytical bit and the practical bit and the creative bit, all of them come together. And one must also realize that in any design classroom or studio, the students also have different strengths and weaknesses. Now, if a studio is focused in one particular direction, then those students who are not strong in that area somehow, fall through the cracks. And therefore, in a studio, it's very important to have a team of people who think differently, who have different backgrounds, and also who have a healthy respect for each other, so that each student is is cradled and let to blossom and move forward without feeling kind of that maybe I'm not so good. You see, I teach in a government college, and a lot of students come from absolutely an environment in which they've been absolutely unexposed to the finer things of life. When I came to REC, it was earlier in REC, the idea of space flowing and all of that did not mean anything to a person who's come from a village in which what they did is they put their cows and their tools and everything into the shanty they had, and they slept outside. So for them to, for them, and it's been brilliant when I've seen those students. They've done so well for themselves, and they had fire in their belly. But it was so important that fire in their belly was not, they were not ridiculed in class. They were not, they were made to work, and they were respected, and they found their own niche with particular faculty with whom they could relate to. This
Agreed,
is so
agreed.
important.
Yeah, Reena, agreed. So we are also then going to look at, what changes can be brought about in our education system. But before we get to that, I have a question for Ashok. Ashok, though you don't seem to have a prefix of a doctor against your name, you have been teaching, I think, for over 30 years in various architectural colleges, and knowing you personally, I know the study and effort you put into teaching. You impart the basics of design and construction to the students. I've seen that, and I've heard you doing that. Do you think that these skills can be taught as effectively online in the new normal? And how do you see these skills developing into the tools for the creators tomorrow?
Firstly, I'll like to clarify. I was nominated a doctor in the SPA trekking team because I used to carry the medicines.
I know that.
Okay. About a new normal, that is all humbug. I can't use other stronger expressions because we are live on Facebook. There is no new normal. The minute there is a vaccine, everybody is going to jump and pile on about, or everybody, I'm going to come to your place for a drink, and Hemant is also going to come, and Reena is going to come from Jaipur, and everybody is going to join us, and we're going to invite people from Manipal also. The point is, architecture or interior architecture, we are in a state of coma. And we all know the expression oncology. In oncology, the thing spreads slowly but surely. So this has been, we have an attitude which was brought by people who studied Bauhaus in Europe. They ruled and they left lots and lots of poop. That's not a bad expression. Minions have used it in the picture, in the movie. So the point is, whether there is a new normal, whether you're looking at the tools, forget about the tools. The attitude has to change. The designer has also got to be a technician, which Dr. Badri said, which Dr. Ma'am from the south, I'm forgetting her name.
Deepika, Dr. Deepika.
Dr. Deepika said, but the point is, who is controlling us? That's why I said in the beginning, Triple ID has an opportunity. It is very easy for Dr. Badri to say that, this model will work, this model, it will not work. If the guy wants a flowing space as Dr. Reena Surana wants, then the guy needs to know how bamboo can be twisted, what is a dia, whether it should be bamboo, Bambusa vulgaris, or what kind of bamboo, if there is RCC. So, and there are people in colleges designing 80-story building without knowing what happens to the water which comes down every 25 meters. We need to break the pressures. So nothing is going to change. It is going to be like this. Artificial intelligence. I remember a movie when I was 10 years old, 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the computer takes over. And that is going to happen because we are all idiots. The minute the vaccine comes, like Dr. Deepika said, we should follow our own, we should not follow the Google map. But I see, the minute Google says this is 2 minutes shorter, including myself, are in that rut, and everybody's into another jam. So nothing will change. This will go on like this. Students will not get employment. And sometimes I tell my students, what are you doing in this 5-year course? Do it. You don't have to do anything. Become a chauffeur, you'll get 25,000 rupees. Okay. Because it's like cancer which is spreading. Right now we are in a coma. Architecture in India as well as abroad. I've had Greek students in Sushant school. They can't draw for nuts. I have been to a school in Seattle in US. Students know nothing about plan elevation, but they can talk about anything for 20 minutes without thinking. So that means the liberal arts have taken over. They can't build. But in design, I'm sure you need to build. Whether it's a stool, whether it's an interior, or whether it's an exterior. So basically, I don't think there is going to be any change. And currently, we are facing an even bigger problem in the online education. The guys are too accustomed to 3D stuff. In studios, we would make models and make them understand, okay, this is the way a sliding door gets hung, whether it's electronic or otherwise. Now they can't understand. I have spent 50,000 rupees in creating a studio here with a special mic and a special camera and a whiteboard, but they still can't understand.
No, it's not
So,
possible.
new normal तो कभी होगा नहीं. If we have to believe our beloved Prime Minister, we should be all vaccinated by July. That means 1 year is lost. People are more worried as students because they're unable to come and socialize, because after all, we've learned in school that man is a social animal. So we want to come, we want to eat the canteen food, we want to get typhoid for a month, we want to also go into the malls, all that is stopped. Otherwise, it is very simple. The people who were never in the studio are still, they've put their 3 dots in front of their name. So an unsuspecting teacher thinks that the student is listening without the video on. But actually, it's the 3 dots in front of his name. Nothing is going to change. We are going to fight like this. I don't think artificial intelligence can take over, as all the enlightened people have said, but it's not, I don't think it's going to change. But definitely it's depressing teaching technology to people who don't have a technical drawing background. Because remember, these days only 1 out of 40 students have a mechanical drawing from school. Others are from combos. So they have social sciences, English and maths. So they can speak English, they can be social and talk about social values, but don't know how a screw goes into it. A third year student will call a screw a nail because the kid doesn't know. And as we've also teach in government school, there are people from villages where they don't understand what is RCC if his father has got a stone lintel in a house which doesn't have a window. So what the hell? Why is a teacher worried about 10% ventilation when I can go out and sleep with the buffaloes at night? So this problem will remain. We are living in an era of utopia. The country has 73% people in the villages. So let us, I think, not be in some kind of a utopia. Sorry if I have sounded slightly.
Absolutely, Ashok. I think that was hard hitting, but it went it hit
Very
where
good.
it's supposed
It
to
is
have.
valid. It is valid.
Very well said, Ashok. Now we'll the last question and the last panelist. No, not the last question, but the last panelist question. Reena. So you have spoken extensively on what ails the teaching profession. You were also explaining that some time ago with respect to the policies of architecture institutions and other policymakers. My question to you is specific to the teaching of interior design, because after all, we are an interior design forum. To what extent do you think should ID, that's interior design, be brought into the architecture curriculum? Because let us face it, most architects anyway do a lot of interior design projects. You're muted, please unmute yourself.
You're right, Ravi. Most architects do deal with interior design projects, some more and some less, but all of them do at some point or in time of their life interior design projects. Now, what I feel is that somehow interior design in a lot of architecture schools is taught as an elective, or even if it is in a compulsory subject, it is viewed with a little bit of lightness, and it doesn't carry that kind of gravitas as, say, industrial design or urban design, which are also, or energy efficient architecture or green buildings. These electives are becoming more and more buzzwords, and interior design is assumed, it is assumed, and that is a very false notion. it is assumed that, people with less exposure to the, other associated, uh, inputs like construction, services, all of building sciences, if they, even if they are, because everything can't be taught at once, so over a period of 5 years you're teaching everything, and therefore interior design can be, clubbed into the 4th semester or the 5th semester. By that time, students have a little rudimentary, and then they can, start taking electives. Now in that, what happens is that somehow interior design becomes more of interior decoration rather than interior design, number one. Number two, look it is given a little less respect. Therefore, I feel that interior design should be there at the rudimentary level, no problem, but also as a high-end elective in maybe the, 9th semester or the 10th, not 10th semester. 10th semester, most of everybody is doing thesis, but 8th semester or 9th semester. And at that point of time, when you have under your belt as a student of architecture, the basics in place, then expand your horizon in, it sounds like a, kind of a contradiction in terms, but to expand your horizon towards interior and understand, the limitations of materials, and the interior has a lot of philosophy on color and in your intellectualism and all that. So that it is absolutely necessary that those who assume that, as small architectural practices these days, even government contracts for institutional buildings, you have to have a something under your belt in which you have, you've done projects worth so many hundreds of crores, only then will you get a project. So when that kind of thing comes, then most small firms of architecture definitely do a lot of interiors, and at that point of time they should be absolutely sure and confident of, how to integrate all the services, all the, even the philosophy, even the design process, and their concept, all of that has to come together. And for that, definitely a lot of maturity is required, and that maturity does not come when you teach interior design in the 4th semester or the 5th semester, I think. But it has to be a choice. So when it's a choice, it can be as an elective after you've done a lot of the other subjects, which are the building blocks which are required to become a good interior designer. I think that's very important, and there should be an advanced interior design
while I think the interior designers on this webinar, the chairman and the chairman-elect of IIT Delhi would agree with you partially, and they would have happy to heard your comments. But
agree wholly.
But I think it should not be there as an elective. It should be part of the 5-year architecture curriculum from day one.
No, it is at the 4th semester. It is at the higher level. You see, not everybody wants to do interiors. There are people who want to do research. There are people who want to go into energy efficient buildings. There are people who want to do industrial design. So at that point of...
They can do research in interior design also.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you can't teach in 5 years everything that is required of an architect or of an interior designer or of any designer. The process of design and the process of learning is a lifetime.
I agree, Reena. As you know, I have also been in an architecture college, and a lot of things taught in an architecture college are of no relevance. I think we should be more aware of, maybe when we studied architecture, interior design was not so dominant or so important, or not given so much importance.
It ought to be.
Today it is. So the curriculum has to change drastically.
Yeah, I agree.
Ravi, I think Badri's anyway put it all in one word in his comment. Interior design is seen as inferior design. And I think, Badri, you want to carry on that?
No, I never said that.
No, Badri did.
Badri said that.
Okay.
I think Ashok also has a point here. He's been raising his finger.
Yeah, I mean, this finger was raised I wanted to just clarify that what Ravi has said is true. And over the years, we have changed. We do talk about space quality. We do talk about colors and sociology. We do in design. We do talk about hundreds of elements which actually go into interior
Yeah.
design. Believe it or not. So, if not explicitly, implicitly, the thing has changed. However, if you look at the syllabus provided by the providers, I will not name because I could be in trouble. The syllabus hasn't changed. We have at our own level, and I agree with all the panelists, we have to do it at our own level because the syllabus can be 100 years old.
Yeah.
So I would
Badri,
just
you
like
were
to
saying something.
put in here.
Patri wanted to say something. Yeah.
I completely agree with Ravi when he said that we need to totally integrate interiors with architectural education rather than offer it as an apology or like an elective. See, the problem is that the way architectural education is, architects look at buildings as sculptures. They look at it as form. They look at it less as space but more as form. And they see themselves as sculptors. One famous John Habraken, he said, this is actually the result of Palladio, who during the Renaissance thought of architecture as beautiful pieces of sculpture in landscape, which people could go around and see as a perfect piece of sculpture. Now, this discourse has dominated architectural education, and even today, architects only look at the outside models and they go, wow, wow, kya form banaya hai. But they don't look at space. With the result, when they learn anthropometrics and how to inhabit a space in first year, by the time they design housing in fourth year, and you look at the units, most of the units are uninhabitable.
Yeah.
The bed sizes are wrong, furniture sizes are wrong, clearances are wrong. So what's happening is because somewhere along the way, we have totally forgotten about the human being who has to finally inhabit the space. So rather than design from outside in, architectural education should train people to design inside out. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Agree with you totally. Agree with you totally.
Actually, I would just like to add that we have a School of Interior Design as well as Architecture in MSAP. So what we have done is we have created a lot of forums where both the students and architecture and design students participate together for design. And from first year onwards, we always have an element of interiors along with the design studio, like the detailing part. We have a studio dedicated for it. And now a new syllabus also has from 7th to 10th semester, a series of elective which makes them minor specializations. So we are giving 5 types of minor specialization. One is interior, one is urbanism, one is sustainability, and one is structures, because architects should not shy away from structures and technology. So we also included minors in technology. So what I was trying to say is the bent of mind, the fundamentals are there from first year to third year in terms of thinking. Like they said, the sociology part of it, or whether anthropometric part of it, color theory. But later on, when they become professionals, they could create an expertise or the eye for the that particular profession more in detail through these series of elective. We have made it a 30 credit specialization, which means they do it over 4 semesters as smaller sub elective. So that much dedication should be there if you want to go into that profession. Otherwise, you cannot call yourself interior designer. Like there has to be some series of discussions and enhancement of that skill set, I would say, which goes into that profession.
Actually, and Hemant, another thing, you should look at the reverse engineering. You should treat interior designer as designing as a major with small components of BArch in it. Why not? Because uh, currently BArch is in its way to demise in India. It may take another 10 years, and currently they are neither interior designers nor architects. With due respect to all architecture teachers, including myself, but there is nothing that invokes a client to be respectful an architect. He is only seen as a guy who's a who's related to a pimp in the corporation and does that. The design is done by the client's wife or the client. And if he is owning a mall, he says how to make a mall. He tells you how to do it. If it's a house, the wife tells you how to do it. Industrialist tells you how a shoe is made, how a toe puff is made, how a heel is fixed. You only get a plan and get it sanctioned. So you should have an interior design course where structures is a minor, construction technology is a minor. And I've done it about 20 years back for something close to Batra Hospital in New Delhi. I don't remember. APJ guys were handling their interior design girls. And these were as small modules given to tell them, okay, this is cement, this is concrete, go to a consultant and do this. That's what we are telling our BA students. The structure, okay, as per structural drawing, you want this thing, come to us, we'll tell you. The guys in the 4th year or 5th year even can't put walls together and think of beams. So I think interior design should run as a full-fledged course where major things should be related to interior design and have these minor things coming in as specializations. Okay, you want to specialize in the way Dr. Badri started, you want to specialize in addition alterations? Okay, you do services. You want to do this? Okay, you also do this. And just forget about architecture. There's no competition. After 10 years, there'll be no architecture. Nobody doing architecture. Because currently, there are these private lalas who are handling the architecture colleges. They can't afford to pay you because hostels are closed now. Their main money was through hostel. So now they can't pay you 1,000 rupees an hour. They want to pay you 400 rupees an hour. So this is a stage where interior designers can easily take over and sort of build it in such a way that when the government takes over, when it finds, oh, this is becoming important, then the government ministries will wake up, take over. By the time you should have frozen a lot of your syllabus and or your content and have some kind of a vision. I think there is no other way. And I may have ruffled a few feathers. I don't know. I know only 50 people are watching us.
But you know, but I've got my answer to your answer to my next question. I'm going to take a page out of Hemant's book here. I'm going to ask each one of you to give me a one-word answer, an option. If you were to join college again, would you take up an interior design course or an architecture course? Ashok, I know your answer.
What is my answer?
Your answer is interior design.
Okay, if you say so.
What about Deepika? You're muted. You have to unmute yourself, please.
Since my field has been more of architecture and allied, I would still go for architecture because of my interest. Nothing to say one is better than the other. It's just about interest.
Okay, Badri?
I think it depends entirely on the teacher. If Professor Ashok Lal were to teach interior design, I would say interior design any day. It doesn't matter, what you learn. Ultimately, it's the teacher who really opens up your mind,
If Dr. Badri Narayan was to teach me, I would probably take up interior design. Reena?
What I feel is that
No, one word answer. Architecture, interior design. What would you take up?
Architecture.
Now, can I ask this question to the two interior designers on Hemant?
Oh, definitely interior design. And I have a couple of things I would like to add because all the panelists are there. And since, Ashok has spoken very candidly, so I would definitely recommend that. Badri, one thing that really frightens me is the word interior architecture. Either you're an architect or you're an interior designer. I have lived all my life and practiced 35 years as an interior designer with working alongside architects with huge chips on their shoulders who do interior design to earn the money, but then don't give recognition to interior design or interior designers for that matter. And for me, as far as I'm concerned, they're not even qualified to do interior design. So either you're an interior designer or you're an architect. Like I can't do architecture. I don't think an architect should be allowed to do interior. Still, all these minors, like Deepika says, and the specialized courses, and it doesn't come in the 7th semester, but comes in the 3rd semester itself. And people actually elect to become interior designers as part of an interior architecture course.
Yes.
If they don't do that, just because you have a Council of Architecture registration, doesn't qualify you to be an interior designer. That's unfortunately how it is. And that is one thing I will accept, that my own association, the IID also, if I am an interior designer or somebody applies for membership today, there are 10 questions asked: which course, which college, how many years, who taught you, what's your syllabus, are you accredited? But if you are an architect from absolutely anywhere in the country or any regional college at the back of beyond, you are automatically qualified to be a member of our institute. I don't think that's the right way to go, but that's of course a personal
Very
opinion.
well said. Very well said. I agree.
Right.
I completely agree with
That I
you.
agree. Totally agree. Totally
I
agree.
think there is also a problem of nomenclature here. I was told a few years down the line when we were kind of really racking our brains as to how to differentiate ourselves from architecture and interior designers. Somebody told us that, oh, you know, what is known as interior architecture in UK, they call it interior design in US. That is number one. Number two, I think it is possible to approach interior design from a uniquely architectural perspective. For example, if you were to plan a 30,000 floor plate of a large corporate building, and if you take 5 floors of it, and you were to tomorrow convert it into a completely a different function, who would you employ? You won't employ an architect, because architect lacks those sensibilities which, like I said, you know, architectural education doesn't simply train you to have those sensibilities as yet. And neither would you approach an interior decorator, because an interior decorator requires a space. The space is not formulated yet. The spaces still need to be formed. So there is somebody who needs to look at structure, look at services, look at functions, and plan the entire space volumetrically, looking at staircases, lifts, and circulation. Only a special blend of architecture and interiors can do that. And that is exactly what we've been trying to do at Pearl Academy, is not look at it purely as interior decoration, not look at it as architecture, but train people to look at interiors from an architectural perspective. I think it's possible to do that.
I think that's what I said basically also, but in a very different manner, because I was born in Haryana.
No, I completely agree with Dr. Badri, because I had the opportunity of working with Trilochan Chaya, who's no more. He used to do these five-star hotel architecture and interior design, where each, like I'm sure everyone knows, the five-star hotel detailing has to be so precise, especially in interiors. But the beauty of it is what Dr. Badri said, is how you can foresee the services along with the interior elements and bring out the best of both together. That I really enjoyed while doing the detailing, especially the working drawings, because then you can see that how the socket and the structural beam can come together, and how the space becomes much more cleaner and neater when you're trying to lay the tiles or put up the materials, because the architecture is already accommodating the elements of the interiors. So the whole space becomes very neat and clean. And in fact, the multiple size of the tiles itself was the size of the rooms, so that there's no cutting involved. And all such experiments were done to become so precise and refined in the whole aspect of interior design plus architecture. So I think that blend would be very fantastic, but the detailing or importance to interior should be there. That I absolutely agree. You can't just call yourself interior design as soon as you get BArch. You have to have a minor specialization, enough number of subjects to call yourself an interior designer. That I feel.
Right, and on that positive note, I think we've already overshot our time, so that tells you how interesting the conversation was. So thank you for all for your candid thoughts, and your Ashok, for speaking your mind. Loved it absolutely. If you are from Haryana, we should have an all Haryana webinar. Ravi, keep that in mind next time. With everyone from Haryana, that will be fun. So, but thank you so much. Thank you, Deepika. Thank you, Badri. Thank you, Ashok, and thank you, Reena, for taking time out and making a rather mundane topic like education into something really as interesting as this. And thanks, Ravi, as always, for coordinating the show. Thank you, Rishu. I know you're somewhere there for running the polls and running everything else from behind. So thanks very much. And hi, there you are. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And we will carry on with the series and we'll keep you updated about our next webinar. Thank you once again, everyone. Bye-bye.
I'd like to thank Triple ID for giving us this platform to speak our minds.
Most welcome,
I'd
Reena.
surely like to thank, I would surely like to thank all of you. It was such a pleasure meeting all of you. I think I use these opportunities to know more of your professions. Though I know you don't like the idea of webinar, but for me to come to Delhi to meet you all may have been difficult, but this gives me an opportunity to talk to you all and listen to you all. It was such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank
It
you.
was a real pleasure to be here. Thanks,
Thank
Ravi,
you.
for inviting me. Thanks, Hemant. And I've known Triple ID for a long time. We have been associated with it. It is always a pleasure to interact with Triple ID. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you.